What's up, Furies? Two of the most dangerous dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon world might be related. I mean, boy, have you seen how terrifying those Night Furies are? But I don't mean related in a family sense, like your brother or sister. I am not telling you that Toothless and the Skrill are secretly trapped in an eternal rivalry, destined for one of them to kill the other and claim the glory for all time. As fun a story as that would be to tell, no, I mean they're probably related in the grander scheme of things in the dragon world. Specifically, that they're evolutionarily related. But first I want to give you some really cool news. So a while ago, as in way back in a time when I did almost exclusively How to Train Your Dragon videos. Wow, that is a long time ago. We decided on the official Sub-Fury t-shirt, and this was the design. We decided what it would look like, what it meant for us as a community to be both unashamedly nerdy and kind, but most importantly, we decided on the two charities that the money made from the t-shirts would go to, and we picked A21, which combats slavery, and the World Wildlife Fund, which protects animals and their habitats. And all the money from these shirts goes to the charities, not to me. And I wanted to give you an update on how much we've managed to raise so far. And it's really impressive. Seriously, I am just so happy. Supreme Leader Mishka is extremely proud of us all. We have raised a grand total of nearly $1,500 US, which is just amazing. Seriously, like, I am blown away. I just want to say thank you so much. And if you want to get a Sub-Fury t-shirt to help support these charities and these causes that we chose, as well as show the world the community that you're a part of, then there's a link to that down in the description below. But on to the theory. So what being evolutionarily related means for this discussion, because it is a complex scientific thing with a lot of nuances and details and complexities, and I am not a biologist, it's where different types of animals share what is known as a common ancestor. And you can sometimes tell that this is the case by looking at similarities between the species, though this isn't a 100% foolproof way of figuring out if they have a common ancestor. There are exceptions to this. But for example, there are a lot of types of birds. There are kakapo, there are kiwis, there are moa, well there were moa, there are haast-eagles, well there were haast-eagles, and there are pelicans, which all look and sound incredibly different. But we know that the pelican and the sparrow are more closely related to one another than, say, the sparrow and the tiger, because, you know, no claws, no stripes, no cat. It's likely that at some point in the past, both the pelican and the sparrow shared a great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather who was their common ancestor. And then over time, as that bird had children, and then they had children, and then they had children, and they had children, slowly these two different types of birds emerged as they sort of adjusted to their environments. Did I science right there? And this principle is still clearly true of dragons. In fact, there was one episode of Race to the Edge where Hiccup talked about dragon evolution. This was where the speed stingers developed webbed feet. I just tried to lift up my foot, but that probably did not get in the camera, so I just looked like it was dancing or something. I've actually made a video before about whether or not the armor wing and the bone napper share a common ancestor. Spoiler, they probably do, and you can click the link up in the corner of the screen to go and check that out. And just the same, there are a number of reasons to think that the Skrill and the Night Fury might be related in a similar way. Let's take a look at their skill ratings for the moment, which isn't the best description of their biology, but it's a good place to start. Neither the Night Fury nor the Skrill have any venom. They both have a stealth of 18, a maximum speed of 19 and 20, an attack of 14 and 15 respectively, and a jaw strength of 4 and 5 respectively. So there are clearly a lot of similarities, but purely having statistics that are close to one another isn't enough to say that they're related. After all, plenty of dragons have a venom rating of 0, and plenty of them have a similar armor rating to the Night Fury. So what makes this different? Well, the most obvious point is the number of statistics that are incredibly similar. It's not uncommon to have 1 or 2 statistics that are very similar to another dragon, but having this many tends to indicate that there's something going on biologically, that they may have had a common evolutionary ancestor a long time ago, in a galaxy far away. boy, the next Star Wars looks fantastic.
But what does all this mean?
That's a great question, walking, talking bear Jesus. Let's break down what I mean by this, because I do feel that the statistics reflect some aspects of their biology. First of all, let's take a closer look at what I feel are pretty accurate descriptions of what might be the skeletons of both a Night Fury and a Skrill. And I want to give a special thank you to the artists who put these together. I mean, on the one hand, there are any number of differences between them. The Skrill is closer to a wyvern with its forearms connecting to its wings, while the Night Fury is quadrupedal. The Skrill has a crown of spikes aimed at helping it conduct lightning, while the Night Fury has a much more angular body shape and head. And the Night Fury also has a winged tail, while the Skrill does not. There are plenty of more tiny details like this, but we're also really here to talk about the similarities, because they're what tell us how closely related they are in this particular circumstance. Firstly, their flame. While it appears that they have entirely different sources of firepower, notably that Night Furies have an oxygen acetylene flame, while Skrills seem to be able to redirect lightning like a freaking firebender, there is a curious detail about Night Fury eggs that clues us into a special similarity between them. So in an early promotional photo for the first movie, we learned that Night Fury eggs need something special to hatch. What is that, you ask? They need to be struck by lightning. People often point out this description that Hiccup uses.
The unholy offspring of lightning and death itself.
To say that they're related, and while I personally feel that that description is more metaphorical than anything else, because what does being the offspring of death mean if they're the offspring of lightning? Lightning clearly does play a role in hatching their offspring. And this connection between lightning and their eggs tells us one vital thing: that Night Furies have the capability to resist lightning bolts, which is an incredibly rare ability and exactly what the Skrill can do. It's very possible that this tendency came from their common ancestor, and while Skrills evolved away from that in order to be able to redirect lightning, Night Furies just kept that initial resistance to it. And I'd also like to bring up the image that we have of a Skrill egg from Rise of Berk, which is clearly all electrocute-y. But let's take a closer look at their wings. So at first, it appears the Skrill has 5 spines to each of its wings, while the Night Fury has 6. But I do want to point out that the Skrill may have had 6 at some point in its history. If you look at this photo, you can see the remains of a 6th spine curving in to attach to the side of its body. This may indicate that the common ancestor between these two types of dragons was not a wyvern, but rather it had 6 spines to its wings and was quadrupedal, far more like a Night Fury. Then, as Skrills evolved away from that to become wyverns, this spine attached itself to the side of its body for extra support. After all, their wings blended with their arms, which they used to walk around. And there's another detail about their wings that we do need to mention. They have virtually an identical wingspan at around 45 feet. We can see this regularly in the times that we've seen them fight in the series. Other skeletal similarities include a ridge of spines from their head to their tail, and while their skulls are relatively different, they both have incredibly wide jaws and relatively flat faces, as in the skulls seem to have shifted a little bit, but they clearly had a sort of similar structure to begin with, which may relate also to their very similar jaw strength. That common ancestor would have likely had a flat skull and a very wide jaw, with a mix between the very sharp and spiky look of the Skrill with the angular and kind of more aerodynamic look of the Night Fury. And I do want to bring up this third point because it's semi-relevant. So obviously, at the end of How to Train Your Dragon 2, Toothless goes into full alpha mode and takes on the Bewilderbeast and defeats him. And while he's in this mode, we can see these rippling areas of blue energy or something underneath his skin, particularly along the ridges down his back, which is interesting to note because the ridges along the back of the Skrill are also where they conduct energy, where they conduct lightning and electricity. If the ridges along the back of the Night Fury also have something to do with kind of storing energy or storing firepower in some way, then this would be another similarity between the Skrill and the Night Fury. It's just one that Toothless had to unlock, whether the Skrills seem to always have it. And these patches of blue energy per se kind of match the shiny parts of the Skrill that we see at various points throughout the series. And notably, when Toothless is in this alpha mode, he seems to have an unlimited shot count. off like 15 bolts at the Bewilderbeast and he still hadn't run out. This is very similar to the Skrill, who, when they're in an electrical storm, when they're constantly recharging themselves, they can't run out of bolts either. They can just continually redirect and fire lightning. So there might be some sort of biological connection between the Skrill and Night Fury in storing energy along the ridges down the back that helps them have an unlimited shot count, that they would have both inherited from that common ancestor. Of course, the real question is, how are dragons related to Supreme Leader Mishka? If you didn't know, he could actually breathe fire. That's kind of his dragon part, and you can see that he's also got the purple wings whenever he wants them.
All hail Mishka, bow down before him.
I'm sorry, I'll woke you up. You can go back to sleep now. Isn't he cute? And finally, I just want to touch on one more thing because I find it kind of interesting. Just like Night Furies, we have only ever encountered one Skrill in all of the archipelago, in all of the movies and all of the TV series. One Skrill. They found it in the ice and accidentally released it. So it begs a very similar question. Why are there no other Skrills in the area? So we've discussed extensively either what happened or where the Night Furies are in the world, and the answer that I think is probably the most accurate one is that they don't live in the archipelago, that they live somewhere else. They live in some faraway land. If the Night Furies and Skrills are related, then that would explain why they're so incredibly rare in the archipelago, because they belong somewhere else as well. In fact, they may have come from a similar area to the Night Fury, because they both had that common ancestor, though they would have also spread out. I think it's possible that just like the Skrill got trapped in the ice by accident for a long time, Toothless ended up in the archipelago by accident, and that's how we got both of them there. And on another note, dragons vary a lot, as in they go from cow dragons to snake dragons to dugong dragons. But Skrills and Night Furies are remarkably closer to one another than most other dragons are, and the Vikings in the movies and TV series seem to know this as well. That's why they used the class system. They tried to group dragons that they thought were kind of related together, and they placed the Skrill and the Night Fury in the Strike class. I mean, they're not exactly biologists, but good on them for trying. The Strike class includes the fastest and the most dangerous of dragons. I mean, clearly, just Night Furies, just incredibly dangerous, murderous psychopaths, all of them. But I've always been curious, because the dragons in the Strike class, particularly the Woolly Howl, the Night Fury, and the Skrill, all seem to be incredibly closely related to one another. They seem to be very similar, and I think that's for a reason, that they all shared a common ancestor. So just like the dragons in the Strike class may have had this proto-Night Skrill, if someone can draw me like a Night Skrill, that would be so cool. The dragons in the other classes would have had a sort of proto-Gronkle type dragon, that many of them were related. And it'd be interesting to kind of figure out what those dragons looked like. So I think that I'll look into that in the future. But that is all from me. If you want to help me decide which How to Train Your Dragon topics I make videos on, then come support me on Patreon and Supreme Leader Mishka for just a couple of dollars a month. There is a link down to that in the description below. Really does me the world if you guys do that. Question of the day, what do you dream about? Let me know down in the comments below. In the meantime, I'd love for you to come follow me over on Twitter and Facebook and email me stuff that you may in the address and links in the description below. Stay nerdy, Furies, and I will see you in the future.